David Carradine is standing on a film set in 1986 when Bruce Lee's son walks up to him and says 5 words. "You took my father's role." What happens in the next 90 seconds does not start a fight. It starts a conversation that neither of them expected, and it changes how Brandon Lee understands his father, his legacy, and the man standing in front of him. Los Angeles, January 1986, Tuesday morning, 9:15. The Warner Brothers backlot, Sound Stage 12. The set of Kung Fu the Movie. 15 years after the original series made David Carradine a household name. 15 years after Bruce Lee was rejected for the same role and went back to Hong Kong to become a legend. 15 years of history hanging in the air like dust particles caught in the stage lights. The set is a recreation of the Old West, wooden buildings, dirt streets, hitching posts, the kind of fake reality that Hollywood builds and destroys every day. Crew members move equipment, lighting technicians adjust rigs, a makeup artist touches up an extra's fake bruise, the ordinary chaos of a film production. David Carradine sits in a canvas chair with his name stenciled on the back. 49 years old. Hair longer now, grayer at the temples, face more lined, eyes carrying something they did not carry 15 years ago. Wariness, wisdom, the weight of a career that peaked too early and never quite recovered. He is wearing the familiar costume, the simple clothes of Kwai Chang Caine, the character that defined him, the character that trapped him, the character he can never escape, no matter how many other roles he plays. To the world he will always be Caine, always be Grasshopper, always be the wandering monk who speaks in riddles and fights only when necessary. He sips coffee from a styrofoam cup, studies the call sheet for today's scenes, tries not to think about how strange this all feels. Coming back to this character, coming back to this world, coming back to the ghost that has followed him for 15 years, and then he sees him, walking across the set, moving through the crew members like water through rocks, confident, graceful, that particular way of moving that cannot be taught, that has to be inherited, that comes from having Bruce Lee's blood in your veins. Brandon Lee, 20 years old. Today is his 21st birthday, actually. February 1st, 1986. His first real acting role, his first film, and the universe has arranged for it to be this film, this set, this story about Kwai Chang Caine. The role his father was denied. Brandon is tall, handsome, has his mother's eyes and his father's cheekbones, wearing simple training clothes, ready for the fight choreography they will shoot later today. He plays Chung Wang in the film, Caine's son, a young man who has been turned into an assassin, a young man who must fight his own father. The symbolism is so heavy, it could sink a ship. Brandon stops 20 feet from David's chair, stands there, looking. His face is unreadable, could be nervous, could be angry, could be something else entirely. 20 years of hearing the story, 20 years of knowing that this man got the role his father deserved, 20 years of wondering what might have been. The crew members sense something. Conversations quiet, movement slows. Everyone knows the history. Everyone knows what Bruce Lee meant to martial arts. Everyone knows the controversy around the original casting. Everyone is watching to see what happens when these two worlds collide. David sets down his coffee, stands up slowly, does not approach, just stands, waiting, giving Brandon the space to make the first move, to say what he came to say, to do what he needs to do. Brandon walks closer, stops 5 feet away, close enough to talk, close enough to fight. The distance is deliberate. Everything about Brandon is deliberate. His father taught him that even before he could walk, every movement has meaning, every position has purpose. He speaks. His voice is steady, controlled, but there is something underneath, something that has been waiting 20 years to come out. You took my father's role. 5 words. Simple, direct, not an accusation exactly, not a question, just a statement of fact, a truth that has hung over this production since the day Brandon was cast, a truth that everyone knows but nobody talks about. David does not flinch, does not look away, does not make excuses. Yes, I did. The honesty surprises Brandon. He expected defensiveness, justification. The standard Hollywood response of it was a business decision, or I was just an actor taking a job, or your father was considered, but instead he gets 2 words. Yes, I did. Brandon's jaw tightens. He was not prepared for this. They said he was too Chinese, that his accent was too thick, that American audiences would not accept him. David nods slowly. That is what they said. But you knew. David is quiet for a moment. The set has gone completely silent. 30 crew members frozen in place, watching, listening, holding their breath. I knew your father auditioned. I knew they rejected him. I did not know all the reasons at the time. I learned them later, learned about the conversations I was not part of, the decisions made in rooms I never entered. Brandon's hands are fists at his sides, not threatening, just tense, holding something in. He created this, the concept, the character, a Shaolin monk in the Old West. It was his idea, and they gave it to you. David considers this carefully. The question of who created Kung Fu has been debated for 15 years. Ed Spielman claims he wrote it. Bruce Lee's widow says Bruce originated the concept. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Lost in the fog of Hollywood development, where ideas merge and evolve and nobody remembers exactly who said what first. I have heard different accounts. I do not know what is true. What I know is that your father deserved the role more than I did. He was a real martial artist. I was an actor who learned the movements. He understood the philosophy in his bones. I had to study it from books. Brandon blinks. This is not the conversation he imagined, not the confrontation he prepared for. David Carradine is agreeing with him, admitting everything, taking nothing away from Bruce Lee. Then why did you take it? David's answer is simple. Because they offered it to me, and I was a broke actor who needed work, and I did not fully understand what I was taking until it was too late. He pauses. By the time I understood the weight of it, your father was gone. I could not give it back. I could not undo what was done. All I could do was try to honor what the role represented, try to bring something real to it, even though I was not real. Brandon is silent, processing. The anger in his body is shifting into something else, something more complicated. David continues, I watched your father's films after he died. All of them. Studied them, not to copy his movements, to understand what he was trying to say. He was not just fighting. He was communicating something about discipline and mastery, and what it means to be powerful without being violent. David looks directly into Brandon's eyes. I could never do what he did. I could never move like him, fight like him, be him, but I tried to carry forward what he believed in. The philosophy, the idea that strength is not about domination, that the greatest victory is the battle you do not have to fight. Brandon's fists slowly uncurl. His shoulders drop slightly, the tension bleeding out of him. People tell me I look like him. You do. They expect me to be him. David nods, understanding in his eyes, and you cannot be. No one can be their father. We can only be ourselves carrying pieces of them forward. Brandon looks around the set. The fake Old West town. The cameras, the lights, the crew members pretending not to listen. Why am I here? Playing your son. Playing a character who wants to kill you. The symbolism is impossible to ignore. I know. David takes a step closer. His voice drops. More private now. More real. When they told me Bruce Lee's son was cast as Kane's son, I thought it was a joke. Then I thought it was cruel. Then I realized maybe it was something else. Maybe it was an opportunity. For both of us. Brandon frowns. Opportunity for what? To close something that has been open for 15 years. Your father and I never met. Never had the conversation we should have had. He died before I could ever tell him that I knew. That I understood what was taken from him, that I was sorry. David's voice catches slightly, just for a moment. I cannot say that to him. He is gone, but you are here. His blood, his legacy, his continuation. Brandon is very still, so I am saying it to you. I am sorry. What happened was wrong. Your father deserved this role. He deserved to be Kane. He deserved to bring Shaolin philosophy to American television as a Chinese man, not as a white actor pretending. The industry was racist and afraid, and they made a choice that diminished what this show could have been. The words hang in the air. 30 years of Hollywood politics, 15 years of buried guilt, 5 words from Brandon, and now this, a full acknowledgement, a real apology, not for the cameras, not for publicity, just one man telling another man the truth. Brandon's eyes are wet. He blinks, looks away, looks back. He never talked about it. My father. My mother says he was hurt, but he never showed it. Just went to Hong Kong and made his own path. Proved them wrong without ever saying they were wrong. That is strength. Real strength. He did not need their validation. He created his own. Brandon nods slowly. I came here today ready to hate you. I know. I thought you would be arrogant, defensive, another Hollywood guy protecting his career. I have been that person. At times. Not today. Why not today? David gestures at the set, at the costume he is wearing, at the world they are standing in. Because I am old enough now to know that legacy matters more than pride. Because your father changed the world, and I played a small part in a story that should have been his. Because you are standing in front of me on your 21st birthday, about to film scenes where you play my son, and I do not want that to be built on a lie. Brandon is quiet for a long moment. The crew is still frozen. The air is still thick with history. Then Brandon does something unexpected. He extends his hand. David looks at it, looks at Brandon's face, sees something there. Not forgiveness exactly, something more complicated. Acknowledgement, understanding, the beginning of something neither of them has words for. David takes his hand. They shake, firm, real, 2 men connected by a ghost. Neither of them can escape. Brandon speaks. My father would have liked you, I think. He respected honesty, respected people who admitted what they did not know. He hated pretenders who claimed to be masters. David almost laughs. Then he would have seen right through me. I have been pretending to be a master for 15 years. Brandon shakes his head. No, you have been honest about pretending. That is different. That is what masters actually do. They know how much they do not know. Something shifts in the air. The tension breaks. The crew members start breathing again. Someone coughs. Someone else moves a light. The ordinary chaos of film production resuming. But something has changed. Something that will affect how they work together for the next 3 months. Something that will make the fight scenes between father and son resonate with truth. Something that will show on screen, even though no one watching will know why. David asks a question. What do you want from this film, Brandon? Not what your agents want. Not what the studio wants. What do you want? Brandon thinks about it. Really thinks. I want to be seen as myself. Not as Bruce Lee's son. Not as the heir to a legacy. Just as an actor. A martial artist. A person trying to figure out who he is. David nods. Then let me help you. These next 3 months, I will do everything I can to make sure the camera sees Brandon Lee. Not a shadow. Not a copy. You. Brandon studies his face, looking for the lie, finding none. Why would you do that? Because your father never got that chance here. They saw him as too Chinese, too foreign, too other. They could not see the artist underneath the stereotype. I cannot undo what they did to him, but I can make sure they see you. Brandon is quiet. Then he asks something he did not plan to ask. Will you teach me something? Not martial arts. You are not. I mean, I am not qualified. I know. But you have been doing this for 15 years, playing wise, speaking in riddles, making people believe you understand something deep. How do you do that? David considers the question. It is a real question, a craft question, actor to actor. I listen. Before I speak, I listen. Not just to the words, but to what is underneath them, what the other person needs, what they are afraid of, what they are hoping to hear, and then I speak to that, not to the surface, to the depth. He pauses. Your father did the same thing with his body. He did not just throw punches, he listened to his opponent, felt what they were going to do before they did it, responded to the truth of the moment, not to a planned sequence. Brandon's eyes widened slightly. Recognition. He used to say that, be water. Respond to what is, not to what you planned. Same principle, different application. He did it with fists. I do it with words. Neither of us invented it. We just found our own way to the same truth. Brandon smiles. For the first time since he walked onto this set. A real smile. Maybe the universe knows what it is doing, putting us together. Maybe. Or maybe we are just two men on a film set, trying to make something true out of something artificial. Either way, here we are. The assistant director approaches nervously, apologizes for interrupting, says they need to start blocking the first scene, the scene where Chung Wang confronts Kane for the first time, father and son. One trying to kill, one trying to save. David looks at Brandon. Ready. Brandon nods. Ready. They walk together toward the set, toward the cameras, toward a scene that will mean more than anyone watching will ever understand. The film releases later that year. It is not a masterpiece. Television movies rarely are. But there is something in the scenes between David and Brandon. A tension, a tenderness, a truth that transcends the script. Critics notice it, cannot explain it. Call it good chemistry, good casting. Do not know about the conversation that happened on a January morning. Do not know about 5 words and 90 seconds and 2 men finding something neither expected. Brandon goes on to make more films, becomes a star in his own right, not Bruce Lee's shadow. Brandon Lee, his own name, his own legacy. 7 years later, he dies on another film set, another accident, another tragedy, another Lee taken too soon. He is 28 years old, the same age his father was when he started becoming a legend. David hears the news in his living room, sits down, does not move for an hour, thinks about that morning, that conversation, that handshake. The last time he saw Brandon was at the wrap party for Kung Fu the movie. Brandon hugged him, said thank you, did not explain what for. David understood anyway. At Brandon's funeral, David does not speak publicly, does not give interviews, just attends, sits in the back, remembers a 21-year-old kid who walked up to him with anger in his heart and left with something else. Years later, someone asks David about working with Brandon, about the connection they seemed to have on screen, about what it was like to act with Bruce Lee's son in a role Bruce Lee was denied. David is quiet for a long time. Then he says, Brandon taught me something that day. He came ready to fight, ready to blame, ready to hate. And when I gave him the truth, instead of excuses, he did not know what to do with it. So he did something harder than fighting. He forgave. David pauses. His father could break boards with his hands. Brandon could break walls with his heart. Different kind of strength. Maybe a harder kind. The interviewer asks what David learned from that conversation. That legacy is not about holding on. It is about passing forward. Bruce Lee gave something to Brandon. Brandon gave something to me that day. I tried to give something back to him on that film. Now I try to give it to others. What is it? What gets passed forward? David thinks, permission. Permission to be real, even when you are pretending. Permission to admit what you do not know. Permission to forgive people who took something from you. Permission to build your own path, even when you are standing in someone else's shadow. He looks at the interviewer. Bruce Lee's shadow was enormous. Brandon had to find his own light inside it. He did, for a little while. Not long enough. Never long enough. David Carradine carries that conversation for the rest of his life. Carries the handshake, carries the smile Brandon gave him when he finally understood. 2 men connected by a ghost, 2 sons trying to escape their fathers, 2 legacies intertwined by an accident of casting, and a moment of truth on a January morning. You took my father's role.
Yes, I did.
And somehow, that was the beginning, not the end. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not excusing. It is not pretending the wound does not exist. Forgiveness is choosing to build something new on top of the scar. Brandon Lee taught David Carradine that in 90 seconds on a film set in 1986. What scars are you still protecting? What conversations are you avoiding because you are afraid of what you might hear? What might happen if you stopped defending and started acknowledging? 5 words: you took my father's role. 2 words: yes, I did. And then, something else, something unexpected, something that only becomes possible when truth enters the room and pride leaves. That is what Brandon and David found. That is what forgiveness actually looks like. Not a transaction, a transformation.